these days, the great British seaside resorts are a right old mess.
If only there was, I don't know, a mobile seagull appreciation unit that travelled around the town giving information about these birds, pulled by a white van. Wouldn't that be marvellous?
The Culture Show featuring Tom Dykoff and Vic Reeves tomorrow at 10 on BBC2.
From Thursday the 19th to Sunday the 22nd of June, the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra presents Listen Here, a thrilling series of concerts at City Halls, Glasgow. There's truly something for everyone, and it's all absolutely free. For tickets, call 01413538000 or visit bbc.co.uk/BBCSSO to find out what all the buzz is about.
The first great gig of the summer. Coldplay are coming. Wednesday at 7. Exclusively to BBC2.
Now on BBC2, we join BBC News.
Well, viewers from BBC Two have just joined us. Very warm welcome to you. We'll look at the front pages of the newspapers in just a few minutes' time. Talks between Shell tanker drivers and their employers will start again tomorrow, or later today, now that it's gone midnight. By then, drivers will have returned to work after a 4-day strike. They're due to walk out again on Friday. Around 600 petrol stations have run out of fuel, and one of the worst affected regions is the southwest of England, as John Moylan reports.
At a Shell garage in West London tonight, a driver fills up, but only with air. Half of the oil giant's forecourts now have limited supplies. A fifth have run dry completely. As day 4 of the tanker drivers' strike comes to a close, it's the southwest of England which appears to have been hardest hit. Here, much of the fuel comes from the main depot in Plymouth, but that's been disrupted by industrial action.
People are panic buying and they've gone and filled the tanks up, and consequently all the petrol stations are empty, you know, and I can't drive around the county looking for fuel.
From Friday, most places have been problematic with diesel, and then it's caused big queues. And then going back into Plymouth where I live, you know, you've got loads of handwritten signs now saying, sorry, none of this, none of that available. So.
Across Britain, there's been fuel trouble at hundreds of garages. 616 are out of one or more types of fuel, but that's just 7% of all forecourts. The drivers are in a dispute over pay with the company that transports Shell's fuels. They're due to return to work tomorrow, but can they restock forecourts ahead of a further planned strike on Friday?
They won't get to normal levels, that would be too much to expect in 3 days, but to a sufficiently high level to allow us not to have fears going into next weekend if we have a strike. Shell drivers will be working in the hours that they're permitted to.
In mainland Europe, truck drivers are protesting too over the cost of filling their tanks. In France, there was a day of action over soaring prices. In Spain, they're returning to work after a week-long strike that hit food supplies and public transport. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia, the world's top oil exporter, said it would boost production by 6% next month. The news should have sent oil lower. In fact, it spiked to yet another record high.
I think it gives a sort of gesture to the market that Saudi Arabia and oil producers in general are prepared to act on the current situation. That will give some comfort to consuming countries. But this gesture is not enough. We need much more oil on the market in order to have an impact on prices.
High oil prices will mean higher prices at the pumps too. Although, of course, tonight for many drivers, the biggest issue is working out simply where they can fill up their tanks. The good news is that the worst affected garages like this one should start being replenished in the morning. Whether they stay that way, though, will depend upon whether both sides in this dispute can cut a deal. John Moylan, BBC News in West London.
Well, a reminder of the headlines this evening, and the bodies of 5 British servicemen killed in Afghanistan are returned home to their families. The men all lost their lives in the past week. And on the same day, Prime Minister Gordon Brown has announced a boost to the number of troops in Afghanistan aiding the fight against the Taliban. And George Bush makes a final stop in Northern Ireland on his last official visit to the UK before flying home. So, front pages of the papers coming up shortly, but all the sport now with Sean Fletcher.
Hello. Tiger Woods has won the US Open for the third time after beating Rocco Mediate in a thrilling sudden death playoff. The two players contested an 18-hole playoff, and despite the world #1 taking a 3-shot lead at one stage, Mediate, who at 45 was aiming to become the oldest player to win the title, pegged him back. He even had a 1-shot lead in the final holes until Woods picked up a shot to draw level at the 18th. So with nothing to separate them again, it all went down to that sudden death playoff, and at the 91st hole of the US Open, Woods held his nerve to win the 14th major of his career. Now to the European Championship, where Chelsea's Michael Ballack scored a stunning free kick to give Germany a 1-0 victory over the co-hosts Austria. The win takes them through to the quarter-finals, where they'll play Portugal.
A good question, one Gomez may not have much of an answer for. Things were getting a little fractious off the pitch. The two managers apparently not the best of Michael Ballack with an absolute screamer. Germany on their way. Austria had their moments, but a lack of bite in front of goal typified their tournament. The hosts go out, Germany go on. Tim Ullman, BBC News.
I think we were very concentrated. We had a very difficult game because we were favourite, and it's always difficult if you're in this position. And even if you lost the last game against Croatia. So we have a big target. We want to go to the final, and this was a very important victory today for us.
And here's the confirmation of the final Group B table. Croatia win it with maximum points, and they'll face the Group A runners-up, Turkey, in the quarter-finals. That game's in Vienna on Friday. Germany are through to the last 8 for the first time since they won the tournament 12 years ago. They'll play Portugal in the first quarter-final in Basel on Thursday. To Rugby League, and the Leeds forward Jamie Peacock will captain England for the one-off international against France next week. Peacock was an obvious choice after leading Great Britain to a 3-0 series whitewash of New Zealand last season. He has 26 caps for Great Britain and played for England in the last World Cup in 2000.
Yeah, it's a fantastic feeling. I'm really pleased Tony's selected me to continue captaining my country, and it's going into a new era now, going into the World Cup, so it's something I'm looking forward to doing. If we could repeat the success in the other sports, international level, it would be fantastic, and we believe we can do it. I think that's an important factor going into this World Cup. We've got the belief there.
The English public seem to think about the cricket and the rugby union. They really kind of take to success at World Cup stage. It'd be great if the English Rugby League team could give the public that.
I agree. I think there's a great affinity with the England teams, and we're hoping that's the same, and we're sure of that. I'm sure people will get behind England, and it also gives the other home nations a chance to develop themselves, and that's a good thing too, and get their support from their home nations behind them. And we've put a lot of thought into those sort of issues, and we want to develop the Celtic nations. So that's all part of the process and taking care of it. But we're sure that England's going to be a successful brand and successful team, in its own right.
The England coach Tony Smith there. Right, that's all for me for now. There'll be more sport later.
Sean Fletcher there with the sport. Right, time to have a look at the morning's front pages. We'll run through most of them. The Daily Mail here, the chip and bin disaster. They're saying a pilot scheme, this is all for the pay-as-you-throw scheme, has been a complete disaster and a total failure. The photograph there, of course, is of the 2 young children who died with their father from carbon monoxide poisoning in Wales. It's a photograph which appears on quite a few of the front pages there, on the front of the Mirror as well. The fuel story, there's a garage owner in Exeter accused of profiteering there as a result of the shortages. Front of the Telegraph, again the 2 children who died in Wales, and above that the Telegraph's lead story, give army families priority on the NHS. The Times, the photographs here, they've taken a very deliberate decision there to show each of the 5 coffins of the 5 soldiers from 2nd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, coming back into the country from Afghanistan, all killed in the last week, of course. Lead story on the Credit Crunch. The Guardian, a Simon Man, the coup plotter, gets his day in court. That's in Equatorial Guinea. We'll hear more of that over the next few days. Complicated but fascinating case. Inflation fears is the lead story. Lecturers pressed to boost degree results. It's a claim that there's dumbing down. George Bush there, the mighty Bush pot plant he was given. And finally, the FT, a more formal photograph of George Bush's visit there, climbing up the stairs at Downing Street with Gordon Brown, of course. Just have a look at, there's one, the Sun, which came in relatively late, just missed our electronic images, and it is back to the tragedy in Wales there, the 2 children. I left you at present is the possibility that the father, who also killed himself, left something for his wife, possibly even a bomb. Let's just look at a couple of, before we move on, a couple of the inside spreads of the George Bush visit. The sketch writers have been having a bit of a field day. This is a couple of pages inside the Daily Mail, pages 10 and 11. Quentin Letts, always entertaining. Well, he's not entertaining from Gordon Brown's point of view. He'd be horrified. And he talks here about how the... well, have a look at the Prime Minister's hair. He talks about how the hair was stuck up at the back as though he'd not washed it for a few weeks. His cheeks bore furrows of fatigue,